John Lennon was murdered outside his New York City apartment on December 8, 1980, just 2 days after giving an interview about his friendship and rivalry with Paul McCartney. When the Beatles split in 1970, the bandmates all went their separate ways, with most of them not meeting up again for years. Paul, who was headlining Glastonbury this year, and John had a particular rivalry that only got worse after the band broke up. In Paul's book, The Lyrics, 1956 to the Present, he said, "When we broke up and everyone was now flailing around, John turned nasty. I don't really understand why. Maybe because we grew up in Liverpool, where it was always good to get in the first punch of a fight." John then threw shade on his former band when he released his first solo album in December 1970, making tensions worse. However, they put aside their differences before the end, with John revealing his true thoughts just days before his untimely end. Paul McCartney and John Lennon in the 1980s, UK journalist Andy Peebles interviewed John Lennon about his life and relationships with his former bandmates. According to The Express, John talked about his lifelong sibling rivalry with Paul. Andy said, he explained how he loved living in New York, and how much he missed England. He told me about McCartney turning up at the Dakota and ringing the doorbell, and John not letting him up, yelling down, "I'm baking bread and looking after the baby. If you think I'm coming out clubbing, you've gone mad." Just 2 days after the interview and flying back to London, Andy learned the news that John had been killed. What did Paul McCartney say of John Lennon's death? In the days following John's murder, Paul requested to speak to Andy to find out as John still loved him despite all the post-Beatles fallings out. Andy said, "He was sarcastic, funny and irreverent, but there was no doubting his fondness for you. We both became very emotional. I knew Paul well enough. I felt awful for making him cry." John Lennon's final words to Paul McCartney years later. Paul's wife Linda shared the last thing John ever said about his old bandmate. Considering what was to come, his last words were truly heartbreaking. Speaking to Ultimate Classic Rock, John said to Paul, "Think about me every now and then, old friend." His final words were used in the song My Old Friend, which Carl Perkins was inspired to write after he met Paul months after John's death. According to Ultimate Classic Rock, the lyric "Think about me every now and then, old friend," caused Paul to leave the room in floods of tears.